Hello and welcome. This is Micro Lecture 5.3, the Kansas City Experiment. This is the third of our lectures in Chapter 5, and it's one that's very near and dear to my heart, in part because I think it shows a real evolution of our approach to criminal justice. Too much in the past, I think, is evident. We tended to focus on myths that were comfortable to us or that we wanted to believe as the basis of what was true or what worked in policing. So let's move on. The actual study was called the Kansas City Preventive Patrol Experiment of 1973. And I can find you links, but I think you can easily go online and find at least summaries of these. But essentially what happened was a fairly progressive, in a scientific sense, a chief of police decided to really look into the utility of the randomized patrol. By the 1960s and early 1970s, the vast bulk of police manpower that was deployed in the streets was deployed in cars with what would be called a randomized patrol mode. So you didn't want to set pattern because you didn't want people to say, well, you know, the car comes by here at 5:15 and we won't see him again for 2 hours, so we can do what we want. So you had a randomized patrol. And it was just kind of accepted, people's gut feelings or people's decisions, that this is the way that policing needed to be done, that the random patrol worked, that it was the most effective allocation of resources, and that automobiles by themselves were part of the answer. So in 1973, the chief of police said, well, you know, let's study this. Let's ask a fundamental question. Is what we're doing working? So the structure of the study basically was they took a part of Kansas City and they broke it down into a number of zones. So there was a large number of beats, and I'll show you a map of those in a moment. And one of these groupings was called the control, or the C zones. And in these control zones, they knew the crime rate, so they continued with their randomized patrols. So everything stayed the same there. That was going to be their control. In another set of beats, or the R zone, the reactive zone, they basically stopped all policing. They pulled the cars off the street. Now, they still responded to a call if there was a disturbance, but they did not randomly patrol. The third one, they increased resources. So the easy way to think of this would be they would double the amount of patrol cars driving in these zones. And the implicit idea from the past was going to be, well, in the control area, crime would stay the same. Let's just pick a randomized number to stay at 100. In the reactive zone where there's no police, crime would go up. Also importantly, because remember, people operate based upon perception. With the absence of police, they would perceive they weren't safe. On the other hand, when randomized patrols were increased, okay, then in those areas, the crime rate would fall. So this next map are the areas they broke down. They were different demographically. They were different by race, by wealth, everything. They tried to control all of it. So what did they find? Well, the results were really shocking for us. The overall report, the final report that was published by the Kansas City Police, was that preventive patrol, what they had been doing, had no effect on crime, fear of crime, community attitudes towards the police, traffic accidents, or response time. So it seemed that the preventive patrol, the random patrol that everyone had been doing, simply didn't do anything, simply didn't work. And I'm going to kind of butcher this quote, but having the police drive around in hopes of stopping crime is as rational as having a fire truck drive around hoping to prevent fires. It simply doesn't work. Okay, well, this led to other studies, because once you begin to determine the truth, you need to decide what you're going to do with that. So here's a listing in the next 25 odd years from the Kansas City Prevention Patrol Experiment all the way up to the Kansas City Gun Reduction Experiment, where they began to say, okay, well, what works? What can we do that will be effective. So just taking one of these as an example, the Newark and Flint Foot Patrol. Um, what they found was by taking the cops out of the cars and putting them on foot patrol, at least in Flint, now it didn't necessarily repeat it in the other jurisdiction, Newark, crime fell 9%, which is not an insignificant decrease in crime. Also, by putting police officers out of their cars and having them walk around, in both cities, Flint and Newark, the public showed a decrease in their fear of crime and this is important, higher satisfaction levels with the police. They began to get along better with the police. So the broken window theory that you've, I'm sure, come across in some of your readings really became a more testable option. We began to say, okay, well, maybe quality of life, maybe small things can be important. Maybe police and public satisfaction with each other are one of the ways forward for a more efficient, effective, and just option for the police. Okay, I kept this one relatively short. I hope you have a good night, and we'll pick up with the next micro lecture whenever you want, because I'm not really here. You're listening to a tape.